Yes, I do support term limits. Mr. President, will work with Congress as well. 6 terms for congressmen, 2 terms for senators to maintain an adequate check and balance between the legislative and executive branch. That's going to take a constitutional amendment, however. So what I would like to submit to you is the seniority rules plan that I would like to advocate. And that is, if you run for election after serving 3 terms, if you get elected for a 4th term, you go back down to 0 seniority in Congress every 3 years. Every term.
Did you support the bailout of the U.S. auto industry, specifically GM and Chrysler? Why or why not?
Within hours of the bailouts being announced, I came out publicly against them and vociferously opposed them at every point and every talk I gave. I believe I was one of the few public figures that did that. I was appalled at John McCain essentially accepting some of those ideas during his campaign, and I spoke against it. I think it's anti-Republican to support that type of picking of winners and losers. And in particular, the auto industry, that was a payoff to the Democratic support of the United Auto Workers. And so therefore, again, it's an example of corruption that I've complained about repeatedly. It's selling legislation for money. So bailouts essentially go to the powerful and they are paid for by the weak. As Republicans, we support everybody equally, and most particularly the ordinary person. So of course I opposed it. The bailouts are a strong example of the feudalistic corruption, and I'm complaining about it. The Federal Reserve was even worse than the General Motors bailouts. The Federal Reserve essentially bought worthless assets from banks and other political insiders, including finance companies associated with the auto industry, and General Electric Finance, which was associated with President Obama. Again, these were all political payoffs. They're the epitome of corruption. They're the epitome of freedom-throbbing legislation. And most importantly, they're the epitome of wealth-destroying policy. When you reward losers to gamble war, you will pay many, many times over. So I strongly object. I did instantly, and I've been consistent in that regard. And there's no way I would support it.
I didn't support the bailout of the auto industry, nor will I support the bailout of Wall Street. Because number one, it runs contrary to free enterprise and the American way of doing business. Number two, it demonstrated that we really didn't need to do that, because within days, weeks, and months after that bailout, what happened to the senior executives is they gave themselves a very hefty bonus, taxpayers' money bonus. That's not what we go to work every day for. That's not why we pay taxes. And certainly, it's not the American way of doing business.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, I did not support the auto industry bailout. I also did not support the bank bailout. You have to be very careful what's happening. What you're seeing is the president continually trying to push the edge just a little bit more, push the edge just a little bit more by trying to set the precedent that says it's okay to gather, because they're gonna build this as a success story for GM. When you set that precedent, you're allowing the executive branch to have too much control over your personal life. So I would always vote against that.
I can tell you I was violently against this. Instead of bailing out cronies, we need to rely on the rule of law.
Amen.
We need to allow failed companies to be bought up by successful companies and get those assets being used by managers who know how to manage.
There you go.
Right? We need to get a little creative destruction that gets assets reallocated to people that can run companies successfully.
Mr. Fleming.
This is a good one.
Do you believe that President Obama has overstepped his constitutional authority? And if so, when and how? Here, you have 45 minutes.
40 days and 40 nights.
So where do you begin? First of all, of the United States needs to understand the Constitution. Yeah. He doesn't. Has he overstepped his authority? Absolutely, in every way possible. From his appointment of his political appointees, usurping the Senate's confirmation, to how he does other business. When he, in his latest debacle, where he says that the Supreme Court doesn't have the authority to rule on his Obamacare because why? They weren't elected. It clearly demonstrates that this president not only does not understand the authority that's invested in him as the president of the United States, but he doesn't understand the formation of the government with the judicial branch, the executive branch, and the legislative branch. It further demonstrates that you have a failed administration, in which you have a leader who has absolutely no skill sets in leading the most powerful, most complicated nation on this earth. To answer it very directly, without a doubt, this president has overstepped his boundaries. It's up to us as Congress now to reel him in, or better yet, replace him in polls.
Well, there's very few leaders in Congress and in the executive branch, most particularly the president, who do seem to put the Constitution first. The Constitution has been shredded for years by both parties. I'm sorry. The overseas wars we got involved with in Iraq and in Afghanistan were undeclared wars. That's going along the pattern that was established with the Korean War. Those were all unconstitutional acts. The war may have been a good thing. I'll leave that to your own opinion. But it should have been declared.
Where do you start? I think the problem we have is we have a president who'd rather be a monarch. He kind of thinks of himself as the king, and he's got this nobility class of bureaucrats and other politicians. And they will curry favor, and they will get bailouts, and they will get handouts. Your tax dollars will go to green projects to people that contributed to his campaign. It's clearly unconstitutional, and it is the role of Congress. You need people that will go and fight against executive overreach.
Thank you very much.
This was a trick question. Absolutely, he's overstepped his bounds. Do you remember in 2008 what they said or marketed as one of his strengths? That he had studied constitutional law? You know, there's the devil in the details. Because the steps that he has taken only happen because he has an understanding of the Constitution. He's trying to usurp it over and over again, which is why each of you need to make a commitment tonight and grab 3 of your neighbors and get into the polls to help him out. It's that important.
I want to privilege, I'll ask a couple of questions. Starting back with Mr. Young. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives was participating in an event that allowed 2,200 automatic weapons to go to the Zeta, as well as the Sinaloa cartels in Mexico, and led to several hundred Mexican deaths, as well as the death of Brian Terry, the ICE agent at the border in Nogales. The question is, Congress is now considering, and some Republicans have put together a proposal for impeachment and ultimately in the Senate conviction of Eric Holder as Attorney General based on this circumstance and his alleged misrepresentation to Congress, saying that he didn't know about this event for a year, when in fact there were emails a year earlier showing he was informed about it. Would you support impeachment and conviction of Eric Holder?
I'm supportive of Eric Holder. I'd also support going after the president for this. At the end of the day, we all heard President Obama promise transparency. And we have anything but. He continues to cover for these guys. Look, what we should be holding President Obama to right now is why haven't you fired this guy?
Yeah, right.
He's either implicit with the problem or he was incompetent to it. He's not qualified for the job anymore. And at the end of the day, not only do we need transparency back, we need to measure accountability in our representatives that are elected, which is one of the reasons why every candidate comes before you, they always use words like transparency. They always use words like accountability. Everyone that's going to come before you and ask for your vote is going to ask, or going to submit to you that they will be accountable. But do they ever prove it? You as voters have to hold them their feet to the fire, which is why as a candidate, I make two pledges to you tonight. Number one, I will be the most accountable or measurable candidate in Congress. How am I going to do that? Here's my pledge. Every quarter of every year, I will come before every county and hold myself publicly accountable in a town hall forum. Now, if you do the math, there are 6 counties in my district, 4 quarters of the year. 24 times a year, I hold myself publicly accountable, so that when I try to ask for your vote, to say that I will be accountable, you'll know that you'll have the opportunity to hold me accountable. If I do that, I'll meet more times with people in this district in 1 year than Congressman Dix did in a decade. But the second pledge I make to you tonight empowers that accountability. Because as your congressman, before each quarter begins, like you do in a business, I will set and list publicly a list of quantifiably measurable goals that we will accomplish that quarter. So at the end of the quarter, when I come back before you in the town hall forum, you can print out that list and beat me over the head with it if I haven't got the job done for you. Measured accountability. That's what we need.
I think the original question was with regards to the constitutionality of impeaching or the idea of impeaching Eric Holder. Absolutely, because really this was a stealth method of trying to get gun control, right? That's what's so bad about this, and again, constitutional overreach. Going behind the scenes in a sneaky manner and then lying to Congress about it when you get caught is impeachable.
I too agree that Eric Holder should go. I would like to see impeachment. I don't see it happening. The Senate is controlled by the Democrats right now. They're not going to convict him. That's the problem. But we do need to keep putting the pressure on people like Eric Holder as much as we can for the complete ridiculous missteps that they've made. Eric Holder has used his office as an enforcement arm of the Obama re-election campaign. And unfortunately, that is not the rule of law that I'm familiar with.
Thank you very much.
So what is the true lack of accountability and the negligence that led to the untimely and unfortunate death of Officer Terry? And somewhere along the line, there always a buck stops somewhere, and it does stop at the desk of Eric Holder. And without a doubt, this individual should be tried and impeached, regardless of whether the Senate's controlled by the Democrats. We can apply pressure as citizens and then the other house. And furthermore, we can just take the Senate by electing enough Republicans and then get the job done.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Mr. Eichner. Which member of the House of Representatives do you believe provides a model of an effective congressman or woman, and why? And don't say Nancy Pelosi.
She got a lot of bad things done. No, for me, because I'm so focused on the Constitution, the person that I think does the most for us in holding back the overreach of the executive branch and the attempts by the judiciary to legislate is Ron Paul. Ron Paul has been consistent about focusing on defending the Constitution. He never changes. He's always been there. And you can agree or disagree with him on different issues, but you have to admire the fact that he's always been consistent. He never flip-flops. I like that about him. I like the fact that he's the only one that's got a budget that actually gets balanced in 3 to 4 years. So that's the mode of what I would go in terms of going to Congress and say, look, we're going to balance this budget in 3 to 4 years, not decades. We don't have decades. We don't. If we don't solve this in 4 years, I don't know if we will have a United States of America the way that we envision it, the way our founding fathers envisioned it. A government of self-rule, people with moral behavior who can take care of themselves with hard work and taking care of each other in their congregations and in their local communities. Not totalitarian top-down government. That's what we need. And we need congressmen who control the purse strings to make that happen. We have the strength. We have the will to do it. Well, actually, we don't currently, but when you send me to Congress, we will. Because I'm going to line up people and say, look, we need to do this. We need to be the backbone and protect what the vision of this nation was. A vision where people's liberties were protected, where private property was respected, and where God was respected. So I'm asking that we have more congressmen who will defend the Constitution.
Well, I think as a model of integrity, commitment, passion, and consistency, Ron Paul is the man. And I would agree with that. As far as a younger version of somebody to emulate, I would say Paul Ryan for the same reasons. He is a man of courage. He is dealing with difficult issues, and he's doing the best he can every day of his life as a congressman. So I would use those two.
I'm going to mention two individuals who I admire back in Congress right now. One whom we all know well, and one whom we hardly know. As I've spent more and more time back in D.C. getting to know the senior leadership. One is our current representative, Kathy McWhorter Rogers, and the other happens to be Representative Tom Cole of Oklahoma. Because one, they do embrace the Constitution, they support and defend this nation, they support the people that they serve, and they also support their party. They are firm believers in what they're doing back there and representing the will of the people.
Thank you very much.
So.
I actually like some of the names there. I love the fact that Ron Paul has been consistent. You need that in somebody that's actually willing to have the courage to stand up for your convictions. There are other things I disagree with you on, but I love the consistency there. I love that Paul Ryan is actually a tiger and goes out there and espouses his view. But the true answer is any one of our congressmen that had the courage to not vote to raise the debt ceiling back in August.
All right. The United States of America is a republic. That means we elect people to go back and vote for us. Washington State has the initiative process. And our Constitution says that this takes, even though the legislature, Olivia doesn't understand this, that takes precedence over even the legislature. When the people pass an initiative, it is highly protected both by the Washington State Supreme Court and by the Constitution. My question is, will you support and endorse an initiative process nationally for people across the country to develop the ability to have a pure democracy and vote as individuals on a bill without having to go to the Congress, that they can circumvent the Congress?
Absolutely not. The republic form of government that we have is a form of limited government based upon a constitution that actually means something. And our constitution is intended to limit the power that is in Washington, D.C. and the federal government. I do support the initiative process at the state because the Constitution says all matters not granted, all powers not granted to the federal government are reserved in the states and in the people. So that's the proper role of the initiative process, in my opinion. But we have to have a true republic based upon true constitutional limitations, or we will simply be devolving into mob rule. Mob rule will never work as a long-term answer because mob rule essentially means the strongest, the best organized, the most ruthless, i.e. the Bolshevik personalities, will win in that situation. So clearly, I'm strongly in favor of a limited government, not a more expansive federal government, which I believe would come if we ignore our constitutional protections against mob rule. It's not a mob rule situation at the state level, in my opinion. There's 50 states. And to that extent, the voters are closer to the issues. And they're also overriding any initiative process in any state is the United States Constitution. So I would say if we went to the initiative process, we would be in a world of hurt right away.
Obama said there were 57 states.
All 7 states get the initiative.
Did I get it right?
Well, first of all, it's important to understand why we have initiatives and referendums in Washington State, one of the 12 populous states in the nation that allows people to use initiatives and referendums. Why? Because in 1889, people said they didn't trust government and they wanted to have ultimate power to make and repeal laws to power the people. That doesn't doesn't work at the federal level, and it doesn't work because we already have the 10th Amendment that allows us through the Constitution to do just that. That's why it's important that when we elect people to Congress, that we elect people who are going to represent our views. Thank you.
I would not support the national initiative process. You know, I heard a phrase in the question that just makes me cringe, and the phrase was pure democracy. The one type of government that our founding fathers most feared because they knew what it leads to. Doug hit it on the head. I'll give him credit, he gives a great answer. That was on the spot because mob rule can be equated with pure democracy. That's what we get. That's why we have a limited constitutional republic. That's what I support.
I would echo that. If you look at history, we have an example of democracy versus republic. The French Revolution was a democracy, and it was mob rule, and it was horrific. A lot of people died. Evil comes oftentimes out of mob rule like that, from democracy. There's a reason why communist nations are always democratic socialist states.
You notice how they woke up to the question? That was the reason for the question, to keep you awake. All right. Mr. Fleming, last question. Is there one thing you want to accomplish as a congressman? And if so, what is it?
20 minutes?
Give away.
No, really the one thing that I'd like to accomplish as a congressman is to get our nation back on track, to get back to the values that we were founded on, to do the things that we as Americans want to do. Number one is jobs and getting our economy back on track. Number two is getting back to the values on which this nation was founded on. Those are important. Those are the things that ground us and define who we are as a nation. Number three is to get us out of this debt. We cannot sustain at the level of spending and borrowing that we're currently doing. We are bankrupting our nation. You know, late this summer and early this year, there's going to be the debates on raising the debt ceiling again, which I adamantly oppose because you're just adding more and more problems to an existing problem. We have to get that back to where we can afford to pay our bills, just like we do in our homes every day. We need to look at how we are spending or adding taxes, and we need to start rolling back some of those tax increases that we all have. I would also focus on the national defense, because again, as I said earlier, with the current proposals that this administration has had, and in the conversation I had a week ago with the Secretary of the Air Force, Assistant Secretary of the Air Force, and the Assistant Secretary of the Army, they are extremely concerned that they will not be able to sustain the defense of this nation with the current cuts, in addition to what we haven't talked about tonight is sequestration, which goes into the effect at the end of the year if we don't get our budget under wraps. So those are the things that I would like to focus on and do. It was one thing, but there are several things you can't really focus on one thing as a congressman.
Well, I take a broader view. I want us to change the world. I want us, laugh if you want, I want us to rekindle the human spirit. That's what we need to do. All my life, we've been running in quicksand, and we still are. That quicksand is hardening around us. So we have to change our world. We have to rekindle the human spirit of freedom. Freedom. That one thing that motivated our forefathers to change the world.
Thank you very much.
Well, first, I'd like to balance the budget. That's crucial. I agree with Stan on that. And second, I want to restore the Founding Fathers' vision of what we could be. A nation of self-rule, limited government, a nation of peace and commerce. We can have peace through strength. That's what Republicans were always about. We can be strong and no one will interfere with us. We need a constitutional republic with a stable currency where individual liberties are preserved.
It's very clear to me, putting the Constitution first. Let's get rid of this federal government overreach that is regulating away the entrepreneurial and innovative spirit of our businesses. If we get rid of that, we'll allow them to actually start creating jobs in up to 21st century that will secure a future for our kids. So let's get the federal government off the backs of the people.
All right, we now have the final summary from each candidate. 3 minutes. Anything they want to say, and thank you for your attention, and we'll wrap it up when they complete their 3-minute presentation, starting with Mr. Young.
3 minutes, and I've got so much. You know, I think to some degree, you need to know where my heart is on this. I think many of you do know my story, but many of you not. One of the key motivational factors for me running is that I did grow up homeless in Hilltop. And most of you know that neighborhood. And it's not a sad story because of a good example and a hardworking mother, I was able to rise up out of it. But as a father of 5 kids, 9 years of age and under, here's what concerns me. They will never know what it's like to have the stress of not knowing where they're going to lay their head tonight. They will never know because of the providential provision I can provide for them. They'll never know what it's like to go hungry today. But I'm not convinced that if you took my kids out from underneath my provision right now and you stuck them back on Hilltop, just 30 years removed from when I grew up there, that they'd be able to rise up out of it the way that I did. That bothers me because I can provide for my kids' future. The Lord has blessed me immensely. I thank Him every night for that. I thank Him for a beautiful wife that loves me. And I thank Him for healthy kids. They'll never know the want that I've had. And I can provide for them. And you know what? I'll probably sweat my own brow. I can provide for my grandkids too. But what about my great-grandkids? What about my extended family, which is very important to me? What about your kids and your grandkids? See, the truth is, I'm stepping out of the private sector at this age because I believe the skills that I bring will allow me to effectively legislate and bring solutions so that our kids have a chance of a good future and opportunity that we enjoyed growing up. And the truth is that is very motivating to me. Now, at the end of the day, as I look out and I see the landscape, I see a lot of negativity out there. And the Bible has a verse. It says, hope deferred makes the heart grow weary, but a vision realized is like a wellspring. And we are dying for a lack of a vision. Which is why when I started tonight, I led the vision. I believe this district can be great. I believe that this district can lead the nation in terms of job growth. If you are willing to articulate that vision, not be scared to be unscripted, and go up there, put the Constitution first, and lay out a plan to be effective day one in Congress. Which is why my plan to fix, secure, and empower this district and leverage the strategic strengths of this district is so vitally important. Because again, this traditional R versus B rhetoric, we've seen tonight, I've been attacked twice by 2 different people. That rhetoric leads to no solutions. We need solutions for our kids now. That's why I'm running for Congress. So that our kids have a future. Jesse, I'm running for Congress. Thank you very much.
All right. I agree with so many things, with so many of the other candidates. I mean, it's obvious why we're all Republicans. We believe in the individual. We believe in hard work and sacrifice and responsibility. We face a tremendous issue with the debt. 40%. 40% is borrowed. We're at 2% interest rates, roughly. It's not out of the realm of possibility we could go back to normal rates of 10%. That's a 5-fold increase in the rate of interest. If it's 10% of our budget right now, what does that make as a percent of our budget going to interest payments? That's 50%. 50% also is the amount of money in the budget that goes to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. If we don't get a handle on this debt right now, we will have no military. You will not be able to send any money overseas because we won't have any to send overseas. We will not have money to run the government except to send Social Security and Medicare checks and Medicaid payments. That's how serious this is. That's why I'm taking time off from running my business. Actually, I'm still running my business. That's why I'm getting 4 hours of sleep a night to do this. Because I think this is so important. The lives of our children and our grandchildren are at stake here. And we are going to have to make tough choices. Everything is going to have to be on the table to be cut. We cannot put our heads in the sand and pretend that we can't look at reducing the cost of the military. We can. We can honor our military members. We can bring our military members home to their families and bring back jobs. Because when we're not subsidizing other people's military defense, they can't compete as well against us. They can't steal jobs overseas as well. We cannot afford to allow other countries to take our jobs overseas. We cannot subsidize other countries taking our jobs overseas. Does that make any sense? That your tax dollars are going to take your jobs overseas? We can bring home our troops. They can be with their families again. And we can be just as strong here. The submarine I was on could destroy 192 cities. That's some awesome power. And that doesn't go away if we bring our troops home and we have peace through strength. I'm Mike Eichner. I'm asking for all of your help to go to Congress and restore our republic.
Thank you very much.
We are at a historic crossroads, quite obviously. That's why we're all here, that's why we're all running, that's why we're all so motivated. But we do have to have big goals. We do have to take control of our world. We do have to change our world. We have to do it with passion, consistency, and we have to do it with great energy, and we can never, ever give up, or we will lose. It's as simple as that. These are not easy struggles. This is the struggle, as I said earlier, the struggle for the individual to be free. You cannot be free, or you cannot be happy unless you have life, liberty, and of course, the pursuit of happiness. Liberty is the precondition for the pursuit of happiness. Otherwise, you're pursuing somebody else's happiness. That's the bottom line. We, as a nation, have historically been an optimistic, happy people. The old observation that's been made repeatedly that in a group of tourists in Europe, you can always spot the Americans. They're the ones smiling. However, not so many people in America are smiling anymore because their happiness has been stolen. Their self-reliance has been stolen. Their optimism has been stolen. Their ambition has been crushed. That's what's killing this country. We do have to renew the human spirit. We do have to reclaim freedom. We do have to get in a bare-knuckle, vicious brawl with the enemy, those that have enslaved us. It's not about one single policy. It's not about a series of policies that's going to change the world. It's about reaching the hearts and minds of the American people with the key issues. And I'm the only candidate that I've heard that have addressed these issues so directly. And I would ask your support in doing so as I continue on this quest for what I call the new American freedom. Because really we are in revolutionary times. And just like in the Soviet Union in 1917, there are forces that are operating against the idea of freedom. Many organized forces are operating right now to finally drop the curtain on your freedom, to finally shred the Constitution once and for all, to finally close the world into the darkness from which we emerged, the feudalism from which we escaped. And that's really what it's all about. It's about that one issue, period. And I tell you what, if we don't think big thoughts, if we do not seek to change the world, we shouldn't be here. And I've done that since I entered public life. I've dealt with these big issues against seemingly impossible odds and cold stares. And right now, the cold stares are fading quick. We have an opportunity once and for all to
Thank you
change
very much.
the world.
So it's been a little debating myself tonight. But nonetheless, it's been fun. more importantly, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for taking time to be here tonight, because this is important. You have a very difficult decision to make come the primary and then come this fall in November to elect people who are going to represent each of you and your views and the passions that you have. It's, as Americans and as citizens here, each and every one of you deserve to have good leadership. And that begins with leaders who set people as a priority. And by virtue of us being here tonight, with sharing the podium with the other candidates, and as well as you all being here tonight, this is a priority for us as Americans. As I said in the beginning, we stand at a very critical crossroads, and the decisions that we make are going to have long-reaching ramifications for all of us for years to come. You know, as you try to go through your deliberation in terms of, do I vote for this candidate or do I vote for that candidate, I will submit this to you, that there are very distinct differences between my opponent and myself. As electeds, our track records are an open book, and everything that we say that we have done is there for the public to read. You know, in my tenure as elected, I'm the only candidate running in this particular seat who's actually written a balanced budget. I'm the only candidate who actually rolled back taxes and proved that government could do more with less if it had the will and if it had the leadership to do that. I believe the federal government could do that if it has the will and the leadership to do that. I am one who has opposed increase in taxes when they weren't necessary, and when they were, that we have a sunset clause that gets rid of them unless the public themselves says we want to continue that tax. I've also have written bills that said that when we impose a new tax and we're already collecting taxes from you, that we roll back those other taxes and give those back to the people. In every instance that we have done that, or the third piece, that when we go for new taxes that are going to go far above and beyond what we're doing, that they should go to the vote of the people, and we should receive their input. You know, my opponent has opposed me on every one of those initiatives, and I think that's a very clear difference. You know, taking the message to Washington that we need a new direction for this nation begins with electing the right people with the experience. If you look at us side by side, you will see there's some very clear and distinct differences. So I ask you for three things tonight. One is for your consideration is that you will take a very sincere look at the experience level between all the candidates running for this office. Two is for your commitment to support, because we can't get there without your help. And number three is for your contributions, because there's no candidate running here tonight or anywhere else that's a Republican. Can't get there without
Thank
your
you
generosity.
very much.
Thank you. Stan Fleming, 10th District.